Hey, good morning. Welcome to Up North News Radio for this Wednesday morning, August 14th. I'm Pat Kreitlow here in Chippewa Falls. Greg Bach is in Waukesha, and we have a stage that is set for the November election. We'll tell you about the primary election results from last night, winners and losers, including on those state constitutional amendment referendums. We have our climate check report asking, where does Donald Trump stand on electric cars? He was for him, then he was against him. Now he's for him again, but he's still promising to be against him a little bit. We'll talk about that. And then in our second hour, our homeroom segment talks about how the Wisconsin Public Education Network will be gearing up for the fall election campaign, an action plan called From the Ballot to the Budget. And we'll talk about what that all entails as far as reaching out to voters and garnering support for our public schools. Plus, Todd Allbaugh will be along as well. The entire shindig gets started at 6:06 across the Civic Media Radio Network. We will see you soon. But first, more editing so that we have a climate check report. Here we go. I should turn my mic off. You don't want to hear me mumbling for the next 3 minutes on this, so we'll just see if this turns out.
Across Wisconsin from Civic Media. This is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Minnesota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Kreitlow.
Well, hey there, Wisconsin. Good morning. It is 6:06 on this Wednesday morning, August 14th, 2024. Just 83 days now till Election Day, with the primary election behind us. And it's another beautiful day to have you here up north, live from Lake Wissota. And wherever you're listening across the Civic Media Radio Network, through the app, through social media, or by podcast, we thank you for taking us along on your day. Maybe my question for you today should be, has your coffee kicked in yet? Because we know what the morning after an election can look like, and I actually got a good night's sleep. But there was an election last night. We've been busy here looking at all of the results, and coming up, we'll tell you about the winners and losers in the primary election. We'll talk about the state constitutional referendums. We'll talk about where we stand as we get set for the November general election, which will include more visits to Wisconsin, J.D. Vance on Friday, Kamala Harris next week on her way to Chicago for the Democratic National Convention. So a lot of political news to pass along today. It's Wednesday, so in our first hour, we have our climate check. Where does Donald Trump stand on electric cars? He was for him, then he was against him. Now he's kind of for him, but he's sort of against him. We'll talk to Melissa Baldoff about the many ways that Donald Trump has tried to have it both ways on electric cars. In our second hour, our Wednesday homeroom segment, we usually do that in conjunction with the Wisconsin Public Education Network. They spend the entire year talking up the value of our local schools and warning about threats to their health. But now we're getting into the part of the calendar where their advocacy really ramps up, and we're going to learn more about their Vote Public Action Plan, from the ballot to the budget. We'll talk with a couple of folks from the network about that. We will visit with Todd Allbaugh as well, have a Brewers update, forecast from Brittany Merlot, and much more. You can join us along the way at 855-75-CIVIC, 855-752-4842. You can call that number or send us a text message on it. You can also call or text us through the Civic Media app. You can also send us an email, radio@upnorthnewswi.com. And if you're watching the show on social media, Facebook or YouTube, put something in the comment section. We may see it and put it up on screen and address it there. All right, where do we start? Well, let's see. I think we've got already a comment on Facebook from Mark saying, "No and no passed. The well-informed voters have spoken." So Mark right away taking us into election results that we're going to get into, where the constitutional amendments, Greg Bach in downtown Waukesha standing by for us, those amendments failed by about a 57-43 margin. Only the second time since 1996 that a constitutional amendment has been defeated at the ballot box. Mr. Bach, good morning, and congratulations to the voters.
Yeah, congratulations and thank you to the voters, and thank you to everyone on Civic Media who we spent a lot of time talking about this. And primary elections and constitutional questions aren't the sexiest topics to discuss, but I really felt like when I saw those results last night, I was keeping them up. I stayed up a little too late waiting for them. And when I saw the results, I'm like, oh, this was like a defeat. This wasn't like skinning your teeth. This was, nope, the people have said no.
Yes, exactly. And look, this takes nothing away from Ben Wickler and the State Democratic Party and plenty of other groups that got involved. Everybody did their part. But I'm here to say that the existence of Civic Media and Up North News also played a role reaching so many people who would not have heard somebody on the radio day after day hammering on this thing, essentially this dirty trick by legislative Republicans to try to circumvent the way that federal aid is distributed, in Wisconsin. So many people had a role to play, and the voters, God bless them, they listened. They said, "Hey, wait a minute, this does sound like funny business. Why would you put a constitutional amendment on the ballot in August? It doesn't make any sense." And the voters figured it out.
And something I didn't even know either was that why are we looking at this all of a sudden? Why is it all of a sudden a problem after 94 years?
Yeah. It had, and of course, it had a lot to do with pandemic relief. And we remember the temper tantrums that Republicans in the legislature were. Oh no, Greg! Breaking news, Greg!
Oh, what?
Big news! Eric
Big news?
Hovde won his primary race for the U.S. Senate. This just in. Eric Hovde won a 3-candidate primary. And to this day, as somebody who tries to be informed on the news, I still don't know who the other candidates were. That's so
Charles Barman and Rajani Ravindran.
good job, everybody. But you couldn't compete with Eric Hovde, who has already spent $13 million of his own money. Let me say that again. He's got so much money lying around, he could spend $13 million already to make sure that he didn't face a primary challenger, and now goes on to take on Senator Tammy Baldwin. So good use of that.
With an 86-point lead. Wow.
Yeah. Congrats on that. $13 million of extra cash lying around. The big result, folks, we're watching over here on the western side of the state. In the 3rd Congressional District, the winner of that primary is Becca Cook. From Eau Claire, she defeated State Representative Katrina Shanklin and Eau Claire Democrat Eric Wilson, and will now move on to be the Democratic nominee to take on Congressman Derek Van Orden. Derek Van Orden has been just an ongoing embarrassment to the 3rd District, but that doesn't matter. Republicans have a super thin majority. They're going to pour a lot into holding this seat. It's not about the guy. It's not about his behavior. It's about just numbers on a chart. And so Democrats will have to do the same thing. House Majority PAC has already pledged $4 million toward the race. My message to House Majority PAC is, that and more. Don't weasel out like you did 2 years ago. Stick with this district because, especially with Derek Van Orden in it, this is a district that can very easily be flipped. There were a lot of extremely good people backing Representative Katrina Shanklin. Many of my friends were backing Katrina Shanklin. And I, stayed out of this. I said that we had some good candidates in here. So all I'm going to say to my friends is I'm taking you at your word that, you did the right thing. You worked on behalf of your friend and legislative colleague, but we also have a good candidate in Becca Cook, and it is time to move forward and flip that seat back. So we'll look forward to, shall we say, a spirited campaign that is coming up. Meanwhile, in the 8th Congressional District, we now know who our friend and Democratic candidate, Kristen Lyerly, will face in November, and it will be Tony Weed. And again, how was it just 8 weeks ago or so? We were saying, Tony who? Tony what? Yeah. Further proof that in today's Republican Party, past service and loyalty mean nothing compared to kissing the ring of Donald Trump. 2 veteran legislators lost last night to a complete unknown. Tony Weed once owned some gas stations in the Green Bay area, but more importantly, he's got enough money. He sought Trump's support. He got the endorsement even before Weed formally entered the race. But that was enough for voters in that district who really like Donald Trump to choose Weed over the former state Senate President Roger Roth and Senator Andre Jacques. So it's now Tony Weed who will face off with Kristen Lyerly in November. Let me go through a lot of these legislative ones. There are quite a few primaries here. State Representative Dora Drake won the state Senate seat in Milwaukee, currently that had been held by Lena Taylor for a long time before she became a judge. In Dane County, in the state Senate 16th District, State Representative Melissa Ratcliffe, who we had on the show a couple of weeks back, she won about 52% of the vote, edging out her fellow state representatives, Jimmy Anderson of Fitchburg and Samba Balda of Madison. Ratcliffe is seeking the Senate seat being vacated by Melissa Agard, who's running for Dane County Executive. Melissa Agard finished first in a 4-candidate runoff election last night, where the top 2 candidates will face off in November to be the next Dane County Executive. There was a very contentious Democratic primary in downtown Milwaukee, Assembly District 19, where incumbent Ryan Clancy, who labels himself as a Democratic socialist, held off challenger Jared Anderson by a 55-45 margin. Anderson had been endorsed by top Milwaukee Democrats, unhappy with Clancy's outspoken stance in favor of Palestinians in Gaza. Over to western Wisconsin, Assembly District 28, which includes New Richmond and Baldwin, former state rep, former TV anchor Rob Krybick, who frequently gets confused for Pat Kreitlow. Rob Krybick appears to have advanced, but beating his Republican primary opponent, a UW River Falls student, by only about 45 votes out of about 5,000 that were cast, a 45-vote margin. There was a similarly close race in the 92nd Assembly District in Dunn and Chippewa counties, where it appears former state rep Joe Pluff is back after, I think, a 16-year hiatus. He defeated Caden Berg by only 47 votes out of more than 6,000 that were cast. In the Eau Claire County 93rd Assembly District, Christian Phelps of the Wisconsin Public Education Network defeated local author Nick Butler by only about 300 votes out of 9,000 that were cast. There was confusion up in Douglas County. A local election clerk failed to realize that the new maps moved one of her townships into a different assembly district. The town of Summit, which has about 1,000 people, was moved from the 73rd Assembly District, which did have a Democratic primary yesterday, and into the 74th District, which had a Republican primary yesterday. But the ballots were printed for the 73rd. So any votes that were cast in that township for the 73rd don't count, and nobody could vote in the 74th because it wasn't on the ballot. Now, fortunately, I guess, the winning candidate in the 74th District Republican primary won there by about 1,000 votes. So it's not likely that the snafu changed the outcome, given that there were about 700 registered voters in that entire township, but still very embarrassing. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we have a few more legislative races to go over. We'll also talk about how there's going to be, again, big visits to Wisconsin by some of the major candidates. J.D. Vance coming back, Kamala Harris, probably Tim Walz. Where's Donald Trump? I don't know. He's talking to Elon Musk about electric cars and changing his position one way or the other. We'll talk about that with Melissa Baldoff at the bottom of this hour. Wherever you're listening across Wisconsin on this beautiful Wednesday morning when you're here, you're up north, live from Lake Wissota on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Babe, I got you, babe. I got you, babe.
On this day in 1965, Sonny and Cher's I Got You, Babe was the number one song and would be the number one song for 3 weeks. More in today's history lesson coming up in just about 30 minutes or so. I mentioned that this Brewer series with the LA Dodgers was going to be a tough one, and it has proven to be that way. Shohei Ohtani homered again last night, his league-leading 37th home run, and the Dodgers got 4 home runs overall in a 7-2 win over the Brewers. The Dodgers now have a 5-game winning streak. Colin Ray has had a really good season, but he's now 10-4 after being tagged for 7 runs and 10 hits over 6 innings of work and giving up those 4 home runs. They will play at 7:10 again tonight, and then at 1:10 tomorrow afternoon, and you can catch those Brewers games on several Civic Media radio stations. Head over to civicmedia.us to learn more. Let's review some more of the primary election results from last night. In Assembly District 24, State Representative Janelle Brandtjen, who Trump had endorsed and who was one of the more prominent election deniers in the legislature, was, because of the new maps, combined with another incumbent in a district, and she lost to State Senator Dan Knodel in a race between 2 Republican incumbents. And former State Representative Tim Ramthun, remember him? He lost a challenge to fellow Republican State Senator Dan Fayen. In Assembly District 69, Karen Hurd, an incumbent Republican from the Eau Claire County area, is actually moving to Clark County to have a better district under the new maps, and she won in her primary against Lori Voss. In Assembly District 86, around Marshfield, again, 2 incumbent Republicans drawn into the same district, and in that one, John Spiros beat Donna Rosar. In another instance of Republicans combined into districts in the 55th District, Nate Gustafson of Fox Crossing won in his primary over Representative Michael Schra of Oshkosh. In another instance, Republican Elijah Benke of Oconto defeated Peter Schmidt of Bonduel. Let's see, and we mentioned the 92nd and the 93rd, so that takes us through the results. But if you missed it up at the very top, again, the constitutional amendment proposals failed, roughly with 700,000 Wisconsin voters saying no, compared to about 520,000 Wisconsin voters that were willing to vote yes on that matter. Now, there will be other referendums coming up in November. There's another attempt by legislative Republicans to amend the Constitution. This one deals with non-citizens voting, something that's already prohibited in the U.S. Constitution. And there will also be many school district referendums. And we'll talk about that in our homeroom section in the next hour as well, because the conditions out there haven't changed. The legislature has been controlled by Republicans who have been shortchanging public schools for a dozen years now. And even though there was a slight increase in the last state budget, it is still far well below what districts need to operate just at current levels because of the spending restrictions put in place by the legislature. Their view has now been, we're not doing our part. You're just going to have to turn to the local taxpayers and make them hike their own taxes if you want to keep the schools operating, because we're not going to give you something even to keep up with inflation. And so there will be many referendums for school districts on the ballot in November as well. The Up North News Daily Newsletter comes out early every morning, and here's one of the stories Christina Laurie put in today's edition. Today is the 89th anniversary, 89 years ago today, that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed into law the Social Security Act. Social Security is 89 years old today and ensures that seniors and the jobless and the injured and others have benefits and economic security and don't fall into poverty because of old age or injury. But the thing is, in our newsletter story, if it wasn't for Wisconsin, it might not have happened at all. 3 years earlier, in 1932, Wisconsin became the first state to give its citizens unemployment compensation benefits. It was all part of the Wisconsin idea, the starting point for a federal unemployment insurance program that became part of the Social Security Act in 1935. So you can read more about that and read about the role that University of Wisconsin alumni played in the development of Social Security and Medicare. You can find all of that in our newsletter. Sign up for it over at upnorthnewswi.com. Click subscribe in the banner up on top of our homepage. A couple of other notes from today's newsletter. Greg, I was a little surprised to see this. Of all of the 50 states, best and worst states for Uber drivers to make a living. And the best and the worst states are right next to each other. Wisconsin is ranked 50th. The worst state to make a living as an Uber driver.
I swear to God, Minnesota.
Number one was Minnesota, where an Uber driver's average salary is $40,000, which is 9% higher than the state's living wage of $37,000. Wisconsin has a couple of things working against Uber drivers. There are some other rideshare competitors that were already established in the state. And according to this article, Wisconsin customers don't tip nearly as well as in other states. Stop being chintzy, kids, if somebody's giving you a ride, okay? I will rail against tipping at things like a fast food counter, but tip your driver.
What? Wisconsin? What are we... Where was... Oh, this... We got to have a talk. We have to have a talk.
Okay, everybody go over to the other camera here. Greg wants to talk to you.
Meet me over at camera 1.
Yeah.
Wisconsinites, what do you mean you're not tipping your Uber and Lyft drivers? Mm-hmm. I don't even understand this kind of malarkey, this kind of dangummery, this bunk, as my dad would say. They work hard. Just because you don't want to do it doesn't mean they... Be nice, tip them. We'll meet again in a year.
There you go. And we'll talk about this some more. One more article in the newsletter, and it's my story on how Republicans have been making it harder to vote in Wisconsin since 2020. And that's not some opinion. There's the actual moves that have been taken to make it harder to vote in Wisconsin. Doesn't mean, oh, we're making voting more secure. We're improving integrity. No. We're just making it harder for qualified voters to vote, and look for that there. So, Greg, you say you haven't seen enough presidential and vice presidential candidates in Wisconsin yet?
Why, no, Pat, I haven't. Can I see more?
Have I got news for you?
Oh, boy, howdy.
J.D. Vance is coming to Milwaukee this Friday. He's going to be talking at the police union office there, which whether police officers who are thankless heroes by an overwhelming margin compared to a couple of bad apples out there, but a couple of bad apples out there are doing things that are not only making for a bad environment out there, but they're also playing right into the hands of people who want to play politics with law and order. And that's exactly what J.D. Vance is going to do. He's going to continue a campaign of fear and lies, and that if you just fear everything, if you fear cities, if you fear black people and brown people, and if you hide behind the police and say, we must give them everything and more, that's maybe how you win elections, but not how you build trust or a safer society. But that's what J.D. Vance is going to come say. And then you've got Vice President Kamala Harris, who I'm getting conflicting reports on whether it will be with or without her running mate, Tim Walz. But that will be at the Fiserv Forum coming up Tuesday during the Democratic Convention. Going to have that rally at the Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee on her way to the Democratic Convention in Chicago. Melissa Baldoff in our climate check coming up next. You're up north. Now it's time for our climate check that we do each week at this time with our friend Melissa Baldoff. Melissa, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm amused. I'm amused today, and I'm sure you are too, because you know what today's topic is. Yesterday, everybody was talking about the Monday night interview, quote unquote, that Donald Trump did with Elon Musk on his dumpster fire of a social media platform, but when it worked anyway. But we thought we'd take a step back because, I mean, it was just so odd to have these two together and acting like bros, and Trump talking about electric cars so differently than he was
differently
before. So we thought we would explore Donald Trump and electric
Mhm.
vehicle. Why could that be, Melissa? It's one of the great political mysteries of 2024.
It is. I am old enough to remember all the way back to the RNC last month
Ooh.
when he said, "I will end the electric vehicle mandate on day one." So,
Yeah, said it all the time. Here's the New York Times headline from May. Can Trump really slam the brakes on electric vehicles? Like you said, he wanted to end federal support on day one. And yet now we see headlines that are more like, Trump now embraces the new rhetoric, never mind his old rhetoric. Trump admits supporting electric cars because of Elon Musk's endorsement. Well, it's not just the endorsement, is it? It's the checkbook.
Right. Well, I mean, I think, we heard, Donald Trump say he kind of had no choice but to be at least a
Yeah.
little bit for our, EVs because of the endorsement of Elon Musk. He said, I'll see what he said here. I'll just repeat his words here. He said, "I'm for electric because I have to be, because Elon endorsed me very strongly. So I have no choice." Which is very telling, I think, about Donald Trump, is that in the way he operates, is that he is very much a quid pro quo kind of guy. We've heard him before telling oil and gas industry executives that he'd be happy to provide them big tax
That's
breaks in exchange for
right.
their donations, and
That's
now he's
right.
gonna
Yeah. So
allegedly
I guess
pretty much have to support EVs.
I guess they didn't come up with the $1 billion that he was trying to shake him down for.
Maybe not, or maybe he'll only be supporting Teslas. I know we also saw reports that he had been gifted a Cybertruck. So, we'll see. But we did learn quite a bit from that, like you said, that event that
Yeah.
Donald Trump and Elon Musk participated in. It's always wild when a self-proclaimed tech genius can't even operate a live stream on his own platform, but so
Right.
it goes.
And so they had this little love fest, or they kind of made up, given the terrible things that they'd said about one another. And you used quid pro quo, and the word I would have used, same thing. It's transactional. Everything with Trump is a transaction, and if you're going to scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. But of course, I'm going to make sure that I get the most out of it, is the way that he's always been. So let's get to the heart of what this is, because the Biden administration has a very ambitious climate proposal, and that includes a rule by the Environmental Protection Agency that's designed to ensure that more than 50% of new passenger vehicles sold in the US are all electric by 2032. So that's the goal. You pair that rule with tax incentives for automakers to produce the vehicles and buy them. So when Trump talks about ending a rule, what he's talking about is ending the payments that go to car makers to make, cleaner burning cars that are better for the climate, that are better for our health and things like that. And he wants to get rid of those incentives. And again, it's all rooted in transactions. And right now for him, transactional relationships are based only in money. He's not embracing Elon Musk because he suddenly had an epiphany about the changing climate.
Absolutely. I mean, this is somebody who, for more than a year has been, blasting the EV policies as lunacy. And, this is not because he has had a change of heart on our environment, uh, for sure. And it is important that you pointed out, the way this has been structured and the way that we are moving towards this, cleaner future when it comes to our automobiles, is that the automobile manufacturers in the U.S. have largely been pretty supportive here, and we're seeing a lot of new jobs related to the EV economy, in terms of people who are manufacturing the vehicles, people who are building out the charging infrastructure across the country. So, for him to, if he does get reelected to another term, and if he does, keep his promise to end the EV mandate on day one, that is going to have a big impact on our economy and on people who are working in the jobs that are supporting the EV industry. So, this is not just something that's going to impact people, on an ideological level and, do I like electric vehicles or not? This is a big economic issue as well.
Yeah, I mean, right now, just if Republicans were to gain the White House and the House and the Senate, the Republicans would likely try to rescind parts of the Inflation Reduction Act, including nearly $400 billion in tax credits for clean energy, for battery manufacturing, for EV sales, and of course for the manufacturing as well. And look at a New York Times article reminds us that for years, automakers were fighting these efforts to impose tight limits on tailpipe emissions. But now that the Biden administration has taken them to this point, including with all those incentives, when if Republicans were to take control of Congress and the White House, they may talk about repealing parts of the Inflation Reduction Act, but I don't know that these automakers and, like you said, all the other ancillary industries, they may not necessarily, you know what? They may be chanting what we're hearing at the Kamala Harris rallies. We're not going back.
Exactly. We're not going back, when it comes to our economy and, costing auto workers their jobs, and not going back on our environment and cleaning up the air. We know that this is a part of how we're going to improve public health. And I think, this is something we're finally seeing, after years of effort, more people, having an interest, getting on board with. There's, really that shift in support for these cleaner technologies, and to just, to cut it off, is a really, beyond misguided policy decision. It's a really dangerous one on multiple different fronts.
I don't know if you're aware of this, Melissa. Actually, I think you said it a few minutes ago. Donald Trump's not a very smart businessman. And here, for an example, here's from Ford Motor Company, William Clay Ford Jr., who's the executive chair. And he's pointing out that in the business world, the last thing they want is a business model that has to change with the political winds. He says, our time frame as a company, our planning time frame is a lot longer than election cycles. And when we're whipsawed back and forth by politicians, that becomes really difficult for us. And I think the consumer probably feels the same way. I feel like they already understand, by and large, where the momentum is for cleaner burning cars and electric appliances and all of those things. And I think you've seen enough of a polling that there's not going to be some kind of a public U-turn all of a sudden and saying, no, we don't want all these advances in technology and all these new jobs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. It takes, like you said, it takes a long time to build support for some of these big policy shifts. And it can't just be that we're resetting every 4 years. That's not sustainable. In the sense of environmental sustainability, or just sustainable in terms of how you operate. You build these big structural changes, and you get the support for them, and you develop that support over time. You build support in communities, you get people on board, you move them along. And to just think that you can change that every 4 years or every 2 years, if Congress is going back and forth, it's completely absurd. And to think that businesses can operate that way, that people can operate their family's budget that way, that, hey, I might have a job for 2 years or 4 years, and then I might be out of work because I've trained for an industry that no longer exists, and now I have to go learn a new trade or start a new career. So to think that as we change and evolve, that some one person could set us back decades is really scary.
Yeah, let's take this closer to home now, where Governor Evers and other Midwestern states, Great Lakes states specifically, are working on an entire network of electric vehicle charging stations. And again, while you may by and large see Democratic names attached to this, if there's one thing that Democrats and Republicans together understand, it's the importance of tourism, and building out this kind of a network across the Great Lakes states, again, is nothing but positives for each of these individual state economies and the regional economy as well.
Absolutely. And I think that we have seen some great partnership from the Great Lakes governors when it comes to this effort, and several other ones, like you said, related to tourism, related to infrastructure, really looking to get that partnership. And, Wisconsin is going to be seeing more than $78 million come in over the next 5 years to build out our electric vehicle charging network, which is incredibly exciting. That's going to support drivers, businesses, tourists. It's going to, grow the economy, grow the workforce, and that is all across the state. It's something that wouldn't be possible without the bipartisan infrastructure law, without the support of the Inflation Reduction Act. And it means that we are going to have better transportation options, a better transportation network, more people getting to work, better environmental outcomes. And, we're going to see people benefiting from that all over the state.
So let's try to sum up then where we think we're going on this. If Donald Trump were to win the election in November, and if Republicans were to win as well, even if Trump wins, he might turn out to be on an island about this. Whereas if Democrats are in Congress, if Democrats are controlling the White House, then we see much smoother sailing toward an entirely new and thriving economic sector. I think I've got the election day pretty well summed up as far as where Trump stands versus, a whole lot of everybody else.
Yeah, I think that's right. And, I think that if this is what Donald Trump really thinks is great, he should pick up a phone, and he should, call auto workers and let them know he's, ready to get rid of their jobs. He should call up companies like Quick Trip and tell him he's going to claw back the millions of dollars of infrastructure investment that are going into Wisconsin that will benefit businesses like Quick Trip that are going to get charging stations across the country. So yeah, I think that if this is something he thinks is so great, he can own it and see how people respond. And I'm going to guess the response is not going to be so good.
No. Melissa Baldoff, thank you for trying to help us make heads or tails of Donald Trump's flip-flops on electric vehicles. We appreciate it as always. Talk to you next week during the convention.
Sounds good.
We'll be looking forward to that, of course. And I think at that point, we'll talk a bit about, as far as the convention goes, what will Democrats be saying in Chicago about the climate versus the Donald Trump record overall. Melissa Kay from WFHR in Wisconsin Rapids joins us for today's history segment. Coming up next, you're up north.
You gotta know it. It's electric. Woogie, woogie, woogie. That you can't hold it.
Ms. Melissa, how are you?
Tired. How are you?
Fine.
It's electric. Woo!
How late did you stay up?
I don't know, 11:30, something stupid like that.
Okay.
Ugh.
Election coverage. Yay!
Yay!
Did you see the text, Pat? Someone asked about. I can't
Yep.
remember. Did you?
Yep.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. Which I saw Lynn's, I saw the Cybertruck, I saw the 73rd Assembly, and I saw
blowing
the
up on the
Facebook comment about the mining in the Congo, and I've got all those to talk about at 7:06 here.
All right, you're just popular on the
I'm just
internet.
trying to give the people what they want, more or less.
Okay.
They don't know what they want, Pat.
Oh boy.
Melissa's tired.
Melissa's
That was me. That's why
tired.
I went to bed at 8:05. I'm like, I don't even know what I want. I want my blankie. All right, here we go.
I'll play for you. I'll play for you.
Today's history lesson begins with happy birthday greetings to Dash Crofts of Seals and Crofts. He turns 86 today. Dash Crofts, his birth name was Daryl Crofts, born in Cisco, Texas. Seals and Crofts had a number of soft rock hits in the 1970s. And in a little 70s soft rock music trivia, along with Dash Crofts, it was James Seals. James Seals' brother Dan Seals was the England Dan in England Dan and John Ford Coley. The two groups whose songs were basically, you couldn't tell one from the other, because that's the way that I joke about Metallica or the Grateful Dead and all the songs sound the same. We can totally say that about 70s light rock back in the day as well, right, Melissa Kay?
That is correct. Sorry, I was waiting for the garbage truck to go by.
Taking away all those ballots that have been counted. Melissa was up very late.
You hear that, folks? Ballots are being thrown away. Oh my
I had
God.
nothing to do with counting ballots.
No.
Nothing.
Ballots. No, all the notes that Melissa had to take on the ballots being. How long were you up working on election night coverage?
I was late. I was up until about 11:30 or so.
Oh, bless your heart.
Well, we did live election coverage, which was great. It was
Yes.
it was interesting to see the AP numbers jump up and jump down and jump up and jump down. We don't know what was going on.
I noticed that as I was looking back at the chat. There's all these different chat boxes going on in Civic Media as well as Courier Newsroom, and it's a lot just try to monitor everybody's conversations. And yeah, at one point there was like they've got 100% of the vote in. No, wait, it's only 80%, and election night is a constant state of flux, shall we say?
It is.
And I've done plenty of those, and I always thought, boy, how nice it must be in the early morning. You come in early and all the work has been done for you. All you got to do is read the numbers.
Poof,
and now
it's
I'm on that.
magic.
Now I'm on that end of things, and I got to tell you, it's pretty darn good.
Rub it in, Pat. Rub it in.
I put myself to bed at 8:05 last night. I was just like, no, I can't anymore.
You
'Cause I knew
earned it,
If
and
I
I'm proud of
started,
you.
if I started following the results, I would just have to stay up with it. And so, thank you and everybody else at Civic Media who worked on following these things. And we'll
For sure.
we'll update everybody at the top of the hour, of course. But thanks for getting up and playing along with us for today's history lesson. David Crosby, music legend. Crosby, Stills, Nash Young. He was part of the Yardbirds for a while and some other groups. He was born this day in 1941. Here was one of the big hits when he was with the Byrds. David Crosby passed away about a year and a half ago in January of 2023. Dr. Frank Oppenheimer of, movie fame. He was born this day in 1912, passed away in 1985. Author Danielle Steele is 77 years old today. Were you a Danielle Steele fan?
Oh, I've read some. I mean, there's a bazillion books.
Yeah, I people who can do that, who can crank out all those books, Stephen King and others.
Well, with Daniel Steele, they're not a whole lot different. They kind of they follow the same story arc every time. So
Well,
they're
right,
a little
but
predictable, but they're comfortable reads.
that's just it. If they're comfortable reads, then yeah, people are going to keep reading them. So yeah, without a doubt. I realized, Greg, that I didn't give you a cue for Steve Martin's birthday. Do you have a tune for that there or no?
Him playing banjo?
Oh, here we go. Steve Martin is 79 years old today. Happy birthday to Steve Martin.
The man is a legend.
Yeah. Magic
Murders
Johnson.
in the building season's 4 soon.
That's right. Yeah, I just saw the commercial for that. Only Murders. Magic Johnson is 66 years old today. Actress Halle Berry, 58. Mila Kunis is 41. The number one song this day in 1965 was by Sonny and Cher.
I got you, babe.
Feel like you're in a movie?
I got you.
Always.
Wow.
First of 3 weeks there for a song better known for Groundhog Day now than anything else. We mentioned earlier that President Franklin Roosevelt signed the Social Security Act this day in 1935, creating a pension system for the retired. And 3 years after Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson did this little duet called The Girl Is Mine, they made a little bit of news. Let's play a little of their song together, back when they were friends.
Every night she walks right in my dreams since I met her from the start. I'm so proud I
So
am.
back when they were a little tighter, shall we say, Paul McCartney gave young Michael Jackson some advice to invest in music publishing. Well, on this day in 1985, Michael Jackson made a winning bid of $47 million for the rights to 250 Beatles songs written by McCartney and Lennon. Turned out to be a really great investment for Michael Jackson. Really not good for their friendship after that. But,
no.
Usually isn't.
Careful the advice that you give. Today is Love Your Bookshop Day.
Woo!
There you go. Yeah, somebody likes her bookshop.
Bound to Happen Books in Stevens Point is awesome.
Okay, there we go. This is National Creamsicle Day. I'm not a big fan of the creamsicle, but other people
I'd eat
swear
one
by
if
it.
you gave it to me.
Oh, okay. This is National Financial Awareness Day. This is National Calligraphy Day. And
Ooh.
National Tattoo Removal Day. Greg, how many tattoos are you sporting these days?
17.
The question being, if you had to
Yeah.
eliminate one, could you pick the one that you would eliminate and have removed?
Yeah,
He's got
yeah,
to
I
think
could.
about this. It's like
No.
picking one of your
Well, I
children.
mean, he's got 17 to think through, so it's
Well-
fair. It's fair.
yeah. I would actually. I would get. So this is not a
we
statement. on
we
the
can come
person.
back to you on this if you want. It's
Okay. All right. We'll talk about it later.
Sounds like we got to unpack some things here.
Never mind.
I know.
All right.
We've-
Fine. Here's the answer. Yes. There you go.
My answer is no. I only have 2, so.
I want to give Melissa time to talk about the WFHR WIRI Customer Appreciation Party.
Yeah, we are so stoked about this party, and I'm going into it with little sleep, so it's going to be a bang, man.
What is it? Is it today?
It's today.
Details.
Details. Okay, it's from noon to 6 at the WFHR WIRI parking lot party in Wisconsin Rapids. And yeah, it's in the parking lot. We're going to block off the parking lot. We got El Taco Social Truck is going to be there. We're going to have a hula hoop contest. My favorite thing is that kids are going to be able to come and try out radio jobs. I've got little mini scripts written for them that they can fill in the blanks to be a morning host or a music DJ, sports broadcaster, or news reporter, and then we'll record their scripts and put it on. Oh, get this! Hold on.
I love this.
What about Shock
This
Jock?
USB wristband. USB
Oh my
drive. It's a
God.
wristband,
All right.
and it's
Well-
got our call letters on it. It's awesome.
Have fun, Melissa, and then get some rest. More in our next hour. You're up north.
Thanks, Rob. Good morning.
Oh, I think I told you. I'm a lover, not a fighter.
Oh, Melissa, you're too fun.
Good to see you guys. Have a good day.
All right, take care over there.
Bye, Melissa.
Bye.
Bye.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Here we go.
Ooh.
All across Wisconsin from Civic Media, this is Up North News Radio. Now, live from our Lake Minnesota studio, here's the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Brightlow.
Well, that's us. Real information, good conversation, unabashedly Wisconsin. This is Up North News Radio, brought to you by Courier Newsroom and carried by our friends on the Civic Media Radio Network. Live from Chippewa Falls, I'm Pat Kreitlow, and it's nice to have you here at 7:06 on this Wednesday morning, August 14th. Coming up in our homeroom segment at the bottom of the hour, we'll talk to a couple of our friends from the Wisconsin Public Education Network. They work all year round to help promote our public schools and identify the threats to public education, but their public advocacy really ramps up now as we head into the general election campaign to inform you about the issues and the candidates and where they stand when it comes to our public schools. So we'll have that later on. We will, of course, talk all about election results in just a sec here. But first, meteorologist Brittany Merlot joins us as well. And so, as always, we start with a happy good morning from Rob in Tigerton, who says it's sunny with light fog. It was a very beautiful day yesterday. On my way to my mowing jobs in Wittenberg, I stopped at the town of Germania Town Hall to vote. It's a historic building along County M between Tigerton and Wittenberg. I did 3 mowing jobs and 1 near Tigerton. Trees are starting to change colors and spots. No.
They are. I can
So
confirm.
we will have an early fall getting my jobs done before the rains come for Thursday and Friday. He did say good morning earlier to Melissa, and he also says it's 57 degrees, no tattoos, just a suntan from being outside. So there you go, Brittany. Fall is on the way, but it's still pretty out there. It's pretty.
It is. It is. I know. I went north over the weekend and I saw some of those trees starting to change. Nothing major, but they are starting. And of course, allergies too, I want to keep in mind, are high today. So take that allergy med if you need it. We're going to see some sun to start the afternoon. And then, of course, as we go through our day, things are changing as this big system starts to get closer and closer to Wisconsin. So sun to start, highs today reaching those low to mid 80s statewide. Winds are going to start to increase, and we are going to see those clouds taking over by this evening. So rain pushes in mainly after midnight for a majority of us. But if you live south and west in the state, it could be here as early as 6 o'clock this evening. So that starts to move on in. Overnight, we get drenched about an inch or so as expected, and then it doesn't stop there. Temperatures fall tomorrow to highs in the 70s, and then we continue to see that rain for tomorrow and even potentially into our Friday, Saturday as well. So that's what's happening. And then beyond that, temperatures do moderate out. They don't really return to our summery highs. They stay a little bit below average next week.
All right. And Rob also chiming in that he does have the water and the Gatorade handy while working outside. So he's listening. He's listening to Greg and to Brittany and us saying, stay hydrated out there. All right, Brittany. Well, can't say, gosh, we could really use the rain, but I guess we'll take the rain because it's
we have to.
coming whether we like it or not. Thank you, ma'am. Have a wonderful day.
You as well.
All right. If you missed some of our discussion in our last hour, you can always follow what we do over at civicmedia.us. It's there that you can listen back to past hours of any given program and learn as well how to download them as a podcast and listen to our shows on demand. That's at civicmedia.us. Meanwhile, for Up North News, which is a separate entity from Civic Media, you can sign up for our daily newsletter at upnorthnewswi.com. My article today is about the ways that Republicans have made it harder to vote in Wisconsin since 2020. And there's a story there about the 89th anniversary of the Social Security Act coming into existence. All right, let's talk a bit about election results here. And I'm going to go a little bit out of order just because I want to address some of the things that came up on our text line and in the comment section. For example, I was asked by somebody on the text line, perhaps I missed it, but did Pat mention the Democratic Assembly primary here in the new 73rd district? And I mentioned it only in the context of the ballot snafu in Douglas County in one township, where the clerk forgot or just missed it that the maps had changed, and one of the towns got moved into a different assembly district. It appears that the mix-up was not, the number of voters was not so much that it would have changed the outcome of the race, but still a very noteworthy mistake up there. But in that 73rd district primary, Angela Stroud won that race handily over fellow Democrat John Adams by an 80-20 margin, and will go on to face Republican Frank Koska in the primary, or I'm sorry, in the general election in November. And then the other district up there was the 74th district, where, again, the race hasn't been called. Chance Green leads fellow Republican Scott Harbridge. That lead is about 1,000 votes. And of that one township in Douglas County that had the wrong ballots, there were about 700 registered voters. So looks like it may not affect the results if that stands up. And so then Chance Green would take on Democrat Jean Rand Bruce in the general election in November. Let's see, also got on the text line from Lynn in Economowoc saying, Pat, what a beautiful day. I have a question. If the Republican legislature took some of the $3 billion budget surplus and properly funded schools, how would that impact property taxes? And maybe we'll talk more about this with the folks from the Wisconsin Public Education Network at the bottom of the hour. But the short answer would be that you wouldn't be able to just give schools $3 billion more. You'd also have to, at the same time, eliminate, modify the spending caps, because it's not that school districts can only raise taxes so much, it's that they can only spend so much, and that if they want to spend more or raise more, they have to go to the voters. There was this budget trick a couple of years back where Republicans said, well, we gave a record amount of money to schools. Not really, it was an accounting trick. They put all this money into public schools, but because they didn't lift the spending caps, the money had to go right back out of public schools as property tax relief. And then, of course, the next year you still had the problems with numbers that weren't lining up. You need to reform the entire system and stop shortchanging it. There was also a comment last hour on Facebook from somebody who wanted to say that they are against electric vehicles and that everybody should, because of the terrible conditions mining for cobalt in the Democratic Republic of the Congo that has been referred to as modern day slavery. And so we took a look through at some of the various stories that have been done. And that point is extremely well taken. Amnesty International and other groups have been writing about the terrible conditions with cobalt mines in the Congo. The answer there, of course, is not to go backwards and to not have, electric vehicles and better battery technology, but rather this is a labor rights, human rights, and environmental concern. We have had way too many instances lately where we work out these trade deals, but we only focus on how it's going to benefit, corporations and consumers without regard for labor rights or for environmental conditions. And we need to do a better job of having more well-rounded trade policies that say, hey, we want to trade with you, but not if you're going to treat your workers, like chattel, and not if you're going to be, ruining your environment. Yeah, we're not ruining ours either. You don't see, a lot of progress toward new mining in northern Wisconsin, but we also don't want mines anywhere else to be, harming the environment any more than is necessary either. And so, yeah, it's a point very well taken, but it's more of a human rights, labor, environmental issue than it is about saying, well, we just won't have, electric cars and battery technology. From Matt in Germantown on the text line, an interesting thing from the election, there is one ward in Germantown near Milwaukee that consists of one house with 4 registered voters. So if you ever looked up results by ward, your ballot would have almost no secrecy, especially if you are one of the registered voters and seeing how your family is voting. It seems like a serious issue. According to the Wisconsin Elections Commission, there is no law preventing this. And that's a very good question, Matt, about, should there be a minimum size that a voting ward should be. Now, obviously, you can't help it if people then move out of that ward, but it would seem if you're going to be setting up wards, you should maybe be combining territories in a way that you can't easily identify the voters that are in there. Matt also asked earlier, Trump was gifted a cyber truck. I assume he has no clue how to drive it. What's he going to do with it? I recall him getting that cyber truck, and I don't know what, if anything, he has done with it. In terms of election results, the 2 constitutional amendment referendums did not pass. They were rejected by voters. About 57% of voters saying no to Republican legislators who tried to pull a fast one and basically engage in a power play with Governor Evers by monkeying around with the state constitution. It would have made it a lot easier for them to micromanage or even delay or obstruct the disbursement of federal aid that comes to Wisconsin. Constitutional amendments don't get voted down very often, but they did this time thanks to a very organized campaign of letting the voters know exactly what kind of political mischief was being taken on in these amendments. In the 8th Congressional District, it is Tony Weed who will advance in the Republican primary for Congress. That's the seat that Mike Gallagher had abandoned, and the seat sits empty right now. There will be a special election for that seat in November to see who fills the seat from November to January, and the regular general election to see who will win the seat come January. And again, Tony Weed, who is endorsed by Donald Trump despite no political experience. His experience is once owning some gas stations, having money, and seeking Donald Trump's support. And he won the Republican primary over 2 veteran legislators. And so Tony Weed will now face Dr. Kristen Lyerly, the Democratic candidate for the 8th Congressional District, in November. And in the 3rd Congressional District, the winner there is Becca Cook, who defeated Representative Katrina Shankland, as well as Eau Claire area Democrat Eric Wilson. Becca Cook will now go on to face first-term incumbent Republican Derek Van Orden in a seat that Republicans are going to defend fiercely, given their very small margin. It does not matter to them about Derek Van Orden's public embarrassments or his ineffectiveness on behalf of the 3rd District. It's all about numbers and power. And so national Democrats, including local Democrats whose candidate didn't win yesterday, would be well advised that this is an all-hands-on-deck situation if they want to flip that district back as it was when Ron Kine held it for 26 years. We'll have more coming up on Up North News Radio in just a bit, including how the Brewers did against the Dodgers. Subtle hint, the Dodgers are really good. Back in a bit. You're Up North.
Babe, I got you, babe.
The number one song this day in 1965 was by Sonny and Cher. It was number one for 3 weeks. Why are you shaking your head at me, Greg?
Go on.
Wait.
Just go on, be a professional radio host.
You can stay up to date with the latest news across Wisconsin by subscribing to the Civic Media Digest at civicmedia.us/email. You can get top podcasts of your favorite civic media programs, news and commentary, and learn what's going on across the entire statewide civic media network. Again, go to civicmedia.us/email. And remember, at Up North News, you can follow what we do on social media. Look for Up North News WI. Don't forget the WI on there when searching for Up North News. This guy, Shohei Ohtani for the Los Angeles Dodgers, he hits the baseball real good. He had his National League leading 37th home run, and the Dodgers got 4 home runs off Brewers starter Colin Ray in winning 7-2 over the Brewers last night. The Dodgers now have a 5-game winning streak. Colin Ray is now 10-4 on the season. He worked 6 innings, but gave up 7 runs on 10 hits, including those 4 home runs. They will play again at 7:10 tonight, and then again at 1:10 tomorrow afternoon. And you can follow the Brewers-Dodgers game tonight, pregame at 6:35. First pitch at 7:10 on WRCE in Richland Center, WRJN in Racine Kenosha, WCQM in Park Falls, and WISS in Oshkosh, he said almost clearly. So we mentioned the constitutional amendments went down to defeat. We told you about the 3rd Congressional District and the 8th Congressional District. There was a U.S. Senate primary, although Eric Hovde faced only token opposition from 2 other Republicans, what with having spent already $13 million of his own money to advance in the primary and to take on Senator Tammy Baldwin. So if you thought you'd seen a lot of commercials in the Hovde-Baldwin potential matchup previously, you literally ain't seen or heard nothing yet over these next 83 days until Election Day. Going through some of the legislative races, there were quite a few where legislators were drawn into districts with each other as part of the new maps. And then there were others that were open seats, like in the 4th State Senate District in Milwaukee that had been held for many years by Democrat Lena Taylor, who's now a Milwaukee County judge. Representative Dora Drake defeated fellow Representative Lakeisha Myers to win that state Senate seat. In Senate District 16, there were 3 Democratic Assembly reps who were looking to win that seat, and the winner was Melissa Ratcliffe, who got 52% of the vote, edging out fellow state reps Jimmy Anderson of Fitchburg and Samba Balde of Madison. The person who had been in that state Senate seat, Melissa Agard, is running for Dane County Executive, and she finished first last night in a 4-candidate runoff election where the top 2 candidates will face off in November. In Assembly District 19 in downtown Milwaukee, incumbent Representative Ryan Clancy, who labels himself as a Democratic socialist and made many Democrats unhappy with his outspoken stance in favor of Palestinians in Gaza, held off a challenge by Jared Anderson, who had been endorsed by many of Milwaukee's top Democrats, Ryan Clancy winning that primary by a 55-45 margin. Let's go way out to western Wisconsin now, Assembly District 28, which is in the Baldwin and New Richmond areas. Former state representative Rob Krybick, who, like me, was an anchor at Channel 13 in Eau Claire, and he often gets confused with Pat Kreitlow, and I often get confused with Rob Krybick, but he is on his way to potentially going back to the legislature. And he was unseated back in 2010, so it's been 14 years since he was last in the legislature. But he won his primary, his Republican primary, over a student from UW River Falls, but at last count, by only 45 votes out of more than 5,000 that were cast. In Assembly District 24, Representative Janelle Branchin, one of the top election deniers, working to illegally undo the results of the 2020 presidential election. Well, she lost in a primary with State Senator Dan Knodel. Also, State Representative Tim Ramthun, or I should say former Representative Tim Ramthun, another very public election denier, lost in his effort to get back into the legislature in a Republican primary. In the 86th Assembly District, the Marshfield area, again, 2 Republican incumbents were drawn into the same district, and John Spiros beat Donna Rosar for that seat. In the 55th Assembly District, Nate Gustafson of Fox Crossing defeated Michael Schra of Oshkosh. And in the 6th Assembly District, Elijah Benke of Oconto defeated fellow Representative Peter Schmidt of Bonduelle. In the 92nd Assembly District in the Chippewa Valley, former Democratic Representative Joe Pluff, who's also been away from the legislature for something like 14 or 16 years, he wants back in, and he too had a very close primary. It looks to be that he defeated his fellow Democrat Caden Berg by only 47 votes out of more than 6,000 that were cast. Obviously, in all these cases, we'll watch for any recounts, and we'll give you an update if that's going to be happening. Next door in the Chippewa Valley, Democrat Christian Phelps defeated fellow Democrat and local author Nick Butler by only about 300 votes out of 9,000 votes cast. Christian Phelps has been active with the Wisconsin Public Education Network, so we have visited with him on the program previously. He put out a statement that said, "I have many people to thank. First and foremost, Nick Butler, who ran a positive primary campaign all summer. I am excited to work in partnership with Nick and his whole team of supporters to flip the 93rd this fall and govern as a community in 2025. And that is going to be a real challenge for Democrats in the Chippewa Valley. Many of whom I know and consider friends. But there were these primaries, Democratic primaries, in the 92nd District, in the 93rd District, and of course, most notably, in the 3rd Congressional District, where, again, Becca Cook won Eau Claire County overwhelmingly. Katrina Shanklin obviously won big in her home turf around Stevens Point. And then Cook won narrowly in the La Crosse County area. And in all of those communities and more, Democrats are going to have to come together, put the primary behind them right away, and move on, not only to help in those particular districts, but if they're going to help Tammy Baldwin fend off the challenge from Eric Hovde. Eric Hovde, of course, is personally well-funded. Derek Van Orden is going to be well-funded nationally. And, of course, Republicans will be coming hard to not only hold on to the Assembly Districts 92 and 93, but they're going to try to take back Assembly District 91, which had been just the city of Eau Claire. And as a result, Jody Emerson, the Democrat there, had been winning handily, but that district line has changed, and now she's going to be facing a tough fight against another former Channel 13 anchor from the Eau Claire area. So all throughout the Chippewa Valley, Democrats are going to have an all-hands-on-deck attitude in order to win back not just the local races, but to make sure that they're helping Tammy Baldwin and to make sure that they're helping Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Wisconsin is as battleground a state as it gets, and the Chippewa Valley is as battleground a region in the state as you can find, as evidenced by that rally last week when Kamala Harris and Tim Walz came to the Chippewa Valley. They're going to the Fiserv Forum next Tuesday on their way to the Democratic Convention in Chicago. J.D. Vance will be in Milwaukee coming up this Friday. And we'll have our homeroom segment next. You're Up North.
I got you, babe. I got you, babe.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Pat.
How are you?
Morning.
All right. Did you see or talk to Christian last night?
I did.
That man worked his heart out.
He worked harder and provided the most amazing model of a candidate, besides Jeff Smith, right, that I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. All right. I've got the 5-pager in front of me here on the Vote Public Action Plan. Am I coming to either one of you for something specific about any of them, or are we just ping-ponging around?
I can do the overview of the workshops, maybe.
Okay.
I I don't know, Chris. Whatever you prefer.
Well, and Pat, I pulled, as she talks about the referendum pieces, I pulled the DPI this morning, the schools going to referendum.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got that data,
Okay.
over half are operational. So that's interesting because that's why we're running a lot of the workshops.
Okay. Let's start then with the referendums and kind of the, what exactly is the Vote Public Action Plan, Chris. And then I'm going to turn to Tess. Tess or Tessa, what do you want to be referred to on the radio?
Tessa, and
Tessa? Okay.
no big deal at all, but my last name, the G is silent.
Malio.
Malio. Yep.
Malio.
Yep.
I apologize.
No worries at all.
Where did that?
Hey, Pat, did you also let everyone know to turn off all other windows and notifications and whatnot? Just want to make sure that way when we're on the air, we don't hear pings and pops and gets in the way of the
I
audio.
feel like somebody's talking right to me as he turns the ringer off on his phone. Okay.
Pat, you've never had... Okay, first of all, passive aggressive. Second of all, that is... Hold on.
Pat, I also
That's never been the case.
Hi, Greg.
Hi,
Greg.
how you doing?
I also pulled the idea too that those caps come off privatization in the 26, 27. So that piece is part of all of this too.
Okay. All right. Good. And thank Greg again for playing the role of bad guy here, so that he tells everybody to shut off all the other noisemakers. So
This guy, I'm the bouncer of this space.
the bouncer, I like it. All right. Okay. Good. So we got plenty to go with here. So I'm gonna pop this back up. I'm gonna put you guys on mute, and I will come get you in 2 minutes.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right, we're right off the primary election, which means we now have 83 days to go until November 5th. There's a lot that's going to be going on. There's going to be more referendums on the ballot come November. There will be, of course, the big races, especially for U.S. Senate and congressional, legislative races, county races, and all along the way, there will be people who have questions about the candidates, either where they stand or the things that they say, and whether those things, square with their actual record. All kinds of groups follow these candidates and these elected officials, perhaps none more valuable than the Wisconsin Public Education Network. And for that, we are very happy to welcome in for our homeroom segment on this beautiful Wednesday morning. We've got Tessa Malio and Chris Hambuck-Boyle. Tessa, Chris, good morning. How are you guys?
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Great. How are you?
Good. Nice to have you both here. Chris, let's start with you, and we'll get in just a moment to the thrust of our homeroom segment this week, which is the Wisconsin Public Education Action Network Vote Public Action Plan. I almost said that right. We'll try it again in a couple of minutes. But first, Chris, if we're talking about elections and referenda, what are things looking like right now for November? And obviously this is still subject to change, but what kind of a year will it be in school districts around Wisconsin come November when it comes to referendums?
So in addition to the 103 questions that were asked back in the spring for school districts as far as referenda go, I just checked the DPI website and there are 38 refs listed already. Over half of those are operational. I would imagine that they are going to triple within the next few weeks as more districts are added to that list.
And we should clarify then too, when you say that many of them are operational, what does that mean? That's the difference between, say, we want to build a new building or we want to build a new gym. Operational means we just want to keep doing what we're doing. We just want to keep paying the light bill, right?
Yes. And often when I get into the data and look at, what districts are going to referendum, the amount that they're going for, oftentimes it kind of correlates to what is going out for privatization. So that's been interesting to watch that increase over time as well.
That is something, of course, we've talked about repeatedly in this segment, is the ongoing effort to make sure that Wisconsin taxpayers and Wisconsin voters understand that the voucher school program is no longer some tiny little experiment, in one little place. This is draining so much from public school districts all across the state, and it is really impacting just day-to-day operations at this point now, Chris, right?
It is. And also there is some urgency here given the new maps and the idea that we can have deeper conversations now that would maybe give more change to how schools are funded. Those caps are lifted in the 26-27 school year as to the number of vouchers that can be pulled from a district. That will be devastating. So these conversations and the deepness of them and the impact of them have to happen now.
It is essentially a ticking time bomb for the health and the future of public education. Is, once those enrollment caps are lifted, so much more money is going to go toward private, usually religious schools. So
it stands right now at $701.6 million this school year.
$701 million this school year going from public school districts to private voucher schools. It's no wonder that the Public Education Network has a Vote Public Action Plan called From the Ballot Box to the Budget. And what you mean by that is the people that get elected at the ballot box this November to the legislature are going to have a direct role in the next state budget and how it impacts schools. So what is the Vote Public Action Plan all about?
Well, I think, our goal is that we center the needs of local students in our ongoing vote public and referenda support. So we're supporting the vote public piece of it so people have that information and have all the information they need to be very educated voters. But also we're here as a network to provide a referenda support network as well. For those districts that are surviving through referendum or, funding their schools through referendum since it's not funded the way it should be.
Tessa, that is an important cog in this because certainly the impression one would get as these school referenda were really on the increase in Wisconsin is I think in a lot of communities, folks kind of felt like they were reinventing the wheel. And now, unfortunately, we've had to go through this enough that, there should now pretty much be a way to help school district public education advocates with these referendums as they come up. Am I correct? And can you kind of describe what that's about a bit?
Yeah, definitely. As the unfortunate reality of so many school districts having to go to referenda, has occurred. That also gives an opportunity for people in different communities and different school districts to rely on each other, and create a support network, as Chris was saying, to share strategies and techniques for what has worked in their communities, to help people understand the importance of passing these essential referenda in their districts.
So when it comes to what is this action plan, comprised of, there's no shortage of basically are these virtual workshops that people can take part in, and can you kind of give us an overview of those?
Yeah. So our fall vote public action plan, as you said, from the ballot box to the budget, right? We're trying to keep the focus on public education and children right through the upcoming election, all the way through the budget process. And that will involve multiple opportunities, both virtual and in person, for people to learn, connect, and take action. So this month we have several virtual workshops. The first one is actually this Thursday night and is specifically focused on kind of referenda basics, but we also have upcoming workshops on school finance basics, how to keep your message focused on, what really matters, positive, kid-centered messaging, election organizing. And we're kind of capping off this first part of our action plan with a Vote Public Day of Action, which is going to be Saturday, September 7th. And that will have both an all-state virtual option as well as regional in-person options across the state, where people can get together, learn some skills for the upcoming election, and then also take action that day in their own communities. And details about all of those events and more that we'll have, through the later in the fall, winter, and spring with the budget can be found at wisconsonnetwork.org/events.
Okay, wisconsonnetwork.org/events. Let me review a couple of these here, and then I can ask either one of you if you want to say more specifically about them. But as mentioned, on the 15th, one is called Referendum Basics, Building a Winning Team to Support Local Schools. The one on the 20th is called School Finance Basics for Candidates and Champions. And I will say parenthetically, you cannot say often enough, here are the finance basics for schools, because there is nothing simple about the way schools are funded in Wisconsin. There's one on the 22nd say about how to focus your message on what really matters to develop a winning referendum campaign. There is a how to get out the vote for public school students there. And of course, the day of action. Chris, if you want to tell more a bit about how these were formed, or which one of those you think, if anybody were to pay attention to and sign up for, you'd recommend, what would you say about these workshops?
Well, I was just meeting yesterday with the Eau Claire School District with their Support Eau Claire Public Schools group as it goes into referendum in November. They're not even on the list, the DPI list yet. I am encouraging school districts to get this information out to their staff, to their administration, to their community groups that support them, so that they can use us. This is all set up. They just have to get on their computer and learn more deeply about how this all works, because you're right, Pat, it's very complicated and it takes a long time to learn the intricacies of all of this. So we're really here to help. And it's a pretty easy to just take this list and plug yourself into what you want to learn about and come and join us. Just all you have to do is go on the website and register. It's all free. We do this as a service to our 421 school districts in the state of Wisconsin. I am going to have a face-to-face group on the 7th at the public library here in Eau Claire in room 104. For those that want to meet together. I'm hoping I get people from across certain school districts locally here, Menominee, Eau Claire, and that we can start working together. I find, as we put this together in my own head, desire to have districts start now supporting each other. I think it's time.
Oh, without a doubt. Far too many times people in school districts have felt like they were kind of on an island. And, now instead of being in these silos, we're building bridges between them. But Tessa, let me ask you this, though, from a personal and interpersonal standpoint. I have noticed through political campaigns how many people, volunteers, candidates, got their start with local school districts, usually with referendum campaigns. This appears to be a point of entry for civic engagement. And again, it's not the most desirable system that we have set up, but what's it like to see people getting activated that way, that they identify, something critical in their hometown, in this case, their local school, and they want to get involved? That's had to have introduced you to all kinds of people who later became more involved in their community.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really inspirational. And it's wonderful to see how, creative different local teams and communities are, and really they know what is going to, work best to communicate with people in their own, in their own communities and in their own school districts. Wisconsin Public Education Network, is statewide, and we're here to provide the facts, provide the resources, and help get people connected. But it's, the local teams and advocates themselves who have these, amazing ideas. Like there's one district going to referendum this fall that's been having lemonade stands this summer, with kids in the community. So lemonade stands to bring in attention to the information about the referendum. And so just being able to see these really, creative, positive, kid-centered actions that people are taking, even though, obviously we wish that their schools were just funded adequately so they wouldn't have to be doing these things. It's also an opportunity for people to take action and get involved and start to care about these issues, and flex their own creative advocacy work.
And then, Chris, finally, briefly about not just the referendums and the overall support, but the candidates who are running, especially for legislative seats. Would it be fair to say that this is going to be an experience in naming names and saying this person has been good to public schools, this person has a record of not being supportive of public schools?
Well, we keep our vote tracker so that we keep this pretty nonpartisan. So people can go on our vote tracker on our website and see exactly what bills are there and how each legislator has voted. So, or supported. So I think that says that in and of itself provides that.
Well, that's just it. And it doesn't have to be a partisan matter. And the fact of the matter is, I think, however this fever is going to break, and we say this about several other issues as well, but with school funding too, there are going to be some, in this case, probably Republicans that get tired of seeing all the money going out of their district and saying, hey, we need to tweak this. But the only way voters are going to know is to look at all their representatives and state senators on this vote tracker and see where they stand, which we wouldn't have without the Wisconsin Public Education Network. You can learn more, especially about this new campaign, at wisconsonnetwork.org/events. Tessa Malio and Chris Hambuck-Boyle, so great, as always, to talk to you guys about these very important topics. Thanks for getting up early with us to talk about it, and we'll check in again real soon.
Thank
you so much.
All right. Have a great day, both of you. When we come back, Todd Allbaugh of the conveniently named Todd Allbaugh Show. I really hope he changes the name of the show one of these days to that. We'll talk to Todd right after this. You're Up North.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you, Chris. Talk to you later.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Tessa. See ya. There he is.
I may change the name of the show to This and That.
This and That.
This and That with Todd Allbaugh.
Oh, please change it to the Todd Father. Make Tony happy.
Right? Yeah. Did Christian Phelps win last night? He was ahead.
He did. Yes.
Wow. Good for him.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what this is referencing, Tony. What are the chances that he landed that job? What a wonderful coincidence. And of course, the obligatory Todd father from Tony.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Here we go. A lot of folks don't know this, but the number one song on this day in 1965 was by Sonny and Cher, and would be the number one hit for 3 weeks. The look that I'm getting from Greg is just priceless. Just loving it. Let's go check in now. If you're watching on social media, Dark Brandon joins us now with his aviator glasses on from a car parked, I'm guessing, near the west wing of the White House, something like that. Oh, no, wait, he took the glasses off. It's Todd Allbaugh. I'm sorry.
Thank you for noticing. I'm wearing my Wisconsin Air National Guard aviators that were given to me by General May last time around, because we're on the road this morning, gentlemen, on the way up to Volk Field in Juneau County, just above the Dells, for the Northern Lightning Exposition. It is a training exercise. We have pilots from all over the country, all kinds of aircraft, and we are going to be set up today, noon until 2, right beside the tarmac. It's going to be spectacular. So I got to have my aviators on.
Okay, I don't mean to be nitpicky. I appreciate what you're doing. I really do. But you know, last week you tried doing the show from a rally with poor signal coverage, but more important, or just as importantly, right by the speakers blaring at you. And we thought, well, that's got to be a challenge, to which Todd says, hold my root beer. And he's now going to hold it on the tarmac of an air show as jet airplanes go streaking past.
You better believe it.
Yeah, you familiar with the soundproof booth concept of radio and being able to hear everything that's going on? Or are you that big a fan of natural sound?
I think it'll be spectacular because, yeah, you'll hear a little aircraft, but we have I call them the sport mic headsets. So, I mean, it won't be that bad. And besides, you get to hear the aircraft. We have pilots. We have some of the people. We have firefighters. We're going to talk to people behind the scenes. I mean, not just the quote unquote people who get the sexy jobs of being pilots, but the people behind the scenes as well. So, yeah, it might be a little noisy, but we'll make it. It'll be okay.
Greg, how great would it be if one of those planes rolls up right behind him, opens up, and meteorologist Brittany Merlot hops out after spending all that time at the EAA and finally, gets her own plane to fly.
And she just pulls off the helmet, takes off the aviators, and just pops like a finger gun. And Todd goes, "Glad you could join me," and then walks away.
Sure,
Brittany, you have to do this. Make this happen today. I know you've made connections. So what are your, and by the way, I Tony up in Ashland, it took me a second when he put up the message. What are the chances he landed that job? And I realized that the job he's talking about is Todd Allbaugh of the conveniently named Todd Allbaugh Show. So good
context.
Good yes, context always helps.
There we
Kind
go.
of like, why would I play the same Sonny and Cher song 3 or 4 times in the morning?
Because it's so hilarious to you, Pat.
This checks out. It is hilarious to me. What did you think of the constitutional amendments going down?
I thought it was a big win for democracy. I thought it was, I guess not a bigger win because democracy is pretty big, but I thought it was a great pilot test runs for the Democratic Party because they were up against big odds. Democrats had a great organization and put a lot of money into assuring that the initiative sponsored by the evil Robin Vos Republicans, I'm not sure, but the Republican power grab, who also put a lot of money in. And I'm not sure if you guys talked about it this morning. I was in the shower and, I don't like to listen to Pat when I'm naked, but so I was in the shower. I'm not sure if you talked about it or not, but the fact that there were texts going out, maybe you guys saw this, to people with like Scott Walker's mug on it and saying, if you want to defeat or go after Scott Walker, vote yes. For all kinds of political shenanigans. Yeah. And despite that, the no people still won. I thought it was a big win for Wisconsin Democrats in that regard. And the final point on that is that the excitement in the 3rd District congressional primary on the Democratic side, and also in Dane County with a county exec race, and also Democratic primaries for Senate and Assembly, I think that drove up the vote for Democrats last night, who were overwhelmingly voting no.
Yeah, very much so. But I know that you will also, I'm quite confident, join me in saying to people who were, critics of Becca Cook during the primary. And, let's name names. Congressman Mark Pocan was one of them. There were my legislative friends, Senator Jeff Smith, Representative Jill Billings, Representative Steve Doyle, Representative Jody Emerson, who put out statements, and they were doing so on behalf of their friend and legislative colleague, Katrina Shanklin. But I also would give them the highest odds of being the ones to say, okay, we shake this off, eyes on the prize, full speed ahead.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
look, go ahead, Greg.
I was going to say Mark Pocan this morning on Twitter is just that. He's all right. New day. Let's get together, get Rebecca elected, and moving forward.
And that's how this is supposed to work, Todd.
Yeah, I mean, we've been around long enough and seen this. Primaries can be contentious and bitter. I lost 2 assembly primaries myself for being too moderate of a Republican in the 3rd district, so I know what that's like. And I just hope that personalities can be put aside. Sometimes this is a little difficult, takes a little bit of time, but personalities can be put aside because I personally believe, I think that Shanklin or Cook, either one, would have been spectacular against Van Orton. And as a congressperson, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that Cook not having a legislative record is going to be much more difficult for Republicans and Derek Van Orton to tie an issue around. He's going to go after the generic Democratic stuff. Cook is extraordinarily likable. We found out last night her grassroots network that she spent over 2 years building is deep. I think that if Harris and Baldwin keep storming the 3rd, I think that Cook can knock off Van Orton. And by the way, our good friend Dr. Lyerly got an early Christmas present, the most wackadoodle job MAGA Republican, Tony, or not Tony, I almost said Tony. Maybe it is Tony? Yeah, Tony Weed. Tony Weed over there, the candidate, not the drug, won last night. And I think that Kristen Lyerly can smoke this guy.
Absolutely. And I want to close with one more thing about the 3rd CD primary. Katrina Shanklin lives in an area that should still be in the 7th congressional district. That area, Portage County, Stevens Point area, was taken out of it to protect Sean Duffy when I was running against him in 2012. That's the whole reason the 3rd CD looks as is as crazy as it was. Katrina Shanklin, I would have loved to have seen her go up against Tom Tiffany. Few people, I would say, in that kind of a district could whoop Tom Tiffany. Katrina Shanklin could have done it if they hadn't played mischief with the maps. And I hope that for Katrina, there's something very positive in the future for her.
Shanklin won her own district with over 80%. People who knew her liked her. I think her problem was she wasn't known well enough around the 3rd district. And to your point, guess what? Tony Evers, Britt Cuddeback, and Maggie Gow, if you're listening, you have a vacancy in the DNR secretary's office. What about Katrina Shanklin?
Ooh, now that's a way to close out a segment. Todd Allbaugh, safe travels. We'll look forward to the show today, noon. Have a great day. Good to see you.
All right, see you later, guys.
There he goes. Okay.
Sorry.
Greg Bach is back for Matt and Air on Air at 10 o'clock. Anything? All right. Well, enjoy that. And thanks to all of you for being here. Thanks to our guests, Melissa Baldoff, Chris Hambuck-Boyle, Tessa Malio, and to you for being here. Have a wonderful Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 6 a.m.